Push the button.
Okay, I pressed it.
Push the button.
All right.
Push
We're live.
Wow.
Hell,
that was fast.
it's fast now.
I didn't even have a chance to start a sentence.
See, I think that I have better internet now. I think it used to be that when I pushed the button, it took longer. I wonder if that had to do with like.
Did you change your internet?
Like I had Rogers, the cheapest one that was like I don't even know, like the band, like the lowest bandwidth, you know, but it was fine for me. And then they like called me and, you know, the typical thing. They were like, what if we were to offer you, they offered me like the highest bandwidth for like $5 more a month, which I just, so, you know, whatever. I know that it's like probably people thinking, oh, you took one of those calls, but and then I thought about it.
No, I think no, because then it's you know, it's whatever for 12 or 24 months probably, right? Like it's
yeah. I'm locked in for 24 months, but it's also like it's a contract because then because I switched my phone to Virgin and then they've been calling me telling me, well, that's a whole other conversation. But like,
I want to know why you're with Rogers Internet is like you're probably paying too much, aren't you?
I'm paying, I forget now what I'm paying, but I think it's like $35 or $40 a month. Like it's not that much, maybe
what?
45.
How?
Let me go to my Rogers right now and see what I'm paying. Because I shopped around and like I
shopped around. I can't get the internet I'm getting, like the speeds that I need to do this with you for less than $65 a month.
65. Oh my God.
And I'm not even with Rogers. I'm with like a Tech Savvy. They're a third-party reseller. I'm actually I have a year-long promo on right now, but
so what's your price there? I'm on a promo. I'm always on
like
promos.
45.
That's what you got to do. You just switch from you never pay full price for this stuff, Brian. That's like the trick to getting cheaper.
Yeah, but
prices.
there's a value proposition from being on the cheapest, like, you know, promo hopping to like not having to call, like spend like an hour on the phone every so often.
I guess I'm willing. I don't know.
It's worth it. It's just it's kind of a pain.
Man, how do I even?
And you don't have to pay like install fees or whatever.
I don't know. Like obviously, I would take that into account. Like I wouldn't switch if there was a. Okay, my last bill. Is this interesting? We're live, eh? Should we talk about?
I think we have a value obsessed audience, right?
Okay, I have $50 a month core for my Ignite 150 internet. I was on 50 before and I'm on 150, but then I think I have, and then I have a $4.35 credit each month. No, a $5. Yeah. So it's like 45. Yeah. Like I said, I'm at 45, same as you. And I'm also, it's like a 2-year promo and then they'll jack up the price, but then I'll go back to, anyways, the whole point of telling you the story is like Virgin called me and offered me $39 or something, or $35 for internet, but I had to say no, because I like agreed to this Rogers thing for 2 years and they'll like charge me if I switch.
I think I feel like there's more competition in Toronto than there is in. I don't think Virgin does home internet.
Well, Virgin is on the Bell network.
Yeah, Tech Savvy's on Rogers.
Yeah, there you go.
But anyway, Virgin is officially a Bell brand.
Well, there you go.
Tech Savvy's like a third party.
Imagine someone like for the first time coming to watch like a live show. It's like, what is this? What have I done? I'm doing this purposely. I'm trying to bore Pete Shane, who's in the chat I see, because I want him to leave because he's in my division this year. And so I don't want him to be here. So I'm just trying to be as boring as possible so he'll leave.
Wow, Virgin's got a good deal on right now.
Yes, maybe you should consider it.
Well, yeah. So obviously, me being me, Tech Savvy is like constantly like, you know, like
what,
fighting in court and whatever against like Rogers and Bell to like help lower cable prices and stuff. So.
What does that have to do with anything?
They're like overall internet advocates. Well, like they like, well,
like you've got a monopoly
in Canada. Okay, basically, Rogers, Bell, and like they all conspire and collude to make sure we're all paying through the nose. And
so you're paying more for so you're paying more for Tech Savvy because you want to like help them.
Well, that's why I'm reluctant to switch. Yeah.
I'm too old for that, Brian. When you get to my age, you'll see you don't have time for this. So
You have never at any age been like that.
You got to think about yourself.
It's nothing to do with it.
You have a daughter, you have a family, like you can't.
Yeah, and I would like my daughter to grow up in a world where the net neutrality,
no
like
chance.
where everything isn't controlled by
No.
two people.
In my opinion, the world's going to get worse and worse for a long time until like all the cities are just burning to the ground. And you just need to make sure to accumulate as much wealth as possible because only the rich will survive. And so
yeah, but only the worst people. If we all just give up.
I guess. All I know is I just want the cheapest internet possible. But anyway, okay. On that note, let's start the podcast. I was going to say something else to the live show people.
Was it like another apology?
Yeah, this is an in advance apology. Like I haven't been able to do my full prep I normally do.
Oh,
so we're going to be doing some prep like as we go. I'm just telling them.
Oh, right. Okay.
We might be doing some more like pauses during the show, to like kind of like just research some things. But I think we already did a show with Dom on Thursday, so this is kind of like a bonus show. So I feel like that's the reason why it should be allowed. But the final version will be good. I'll edit it, but just so you know, maybe people will enjoy it. I don't know. You guys can help us out, like to like make sure we're saying the right things. Okay. All that said, Brian, let's get started here. That was like a patron cast.
Is that the episode?
Nothing. Is
Thanks,
this good?
Everyone. It's been great to be with you. Have a great rest of your night.
I wonder if sometimes like
I would do like sometimes what?
Yeah, maybe like the stuff that we're not talking about hockey is like better. Or maybe not. Maybe that's me being an idiot and thinking like something that's definitely not true.
Maybe your phone call will have some information on that tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Let's start the show. Look at this guy. Also, you teased the patrons at the end of the last one, being all like, we're going to talk about taxes afterwards. Like, you got to stop talking. Okay. All right.
What?
At the end of the last show, you were like, Elon, after the show,
yeah, so
I want to talk to you about
about
something private. Okay. You're always teasing things.
I'm not teasing anything.
Everything we talk
about. No
one
one feels teased. If you feel teased in the chat, tell me.
Okay.
I will untease.
All right, let's start the show.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Whoa.
I haven't done that in a while.
Damn.
Make my throat.
Loved the yes. It's going to be a night tonight.
Me. Okay. Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys, one of whom did a show by himself last year for a while called the Matchup Maximizer, and I'm a little bit rusty on that, so we're doing this as a twofer. So I'm bringing in Brian to help me out for the season premiere of this one. I'm your host. Is that good? I think it works. Okay, let me try it again.
It's just
in the world, hosted by two guys, one of whom did the Matchup Maximizer by himself last year. That was me. And since this is the season premiere of the Matchup Maximizer, the whole thing. Okay, this is just a bad joke overall. So let me think of a whole new joke. Brian, tell me a joke about schedules, and then we'll get the show on the road here.
Who wish we'd maximized our work schedules as well as we do for our fantasy team.
Wish I could like organize my life schedule.
And then I can like go and like cut out meetings here.
All right, let's do it. It's beautiful.
Okay.
Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who wish they could organize their life schedule as well as they organize the schedules on their fantasy teams. I'm your host, Elon Dubrovsky, and with me to talk everything NHL schedule. That's right, it's the season premiere of the Matchup Maximizer, pretty much. It is the fantasy hockey robot, the Pooh Bob prognostication, the IPP MVP himself, Brian Com. Brian, welcome to the season premiere of Matchup Maximizer.
Welcome. Oh, I guess I get welcomed because usually this is a solo endeavor for you. I am honored to be the guest on this season's. Is this what we're doing? This season's Matchup Maximizer debut? Or like in real life, as you mentioned, I wish I could maximize my schedule and usefulness, or maybe I just need to dedicate the same amount of time to my real life, like figure out my heavy days and light days, move things around accordingly, or get into hobbies where, they only happen on my light days. spread things out nicely, which is what we're trying to do in fantasy hockey. And we've got some really interesting thoughts tonight, not just like we're going to take it a step further, I think, for my pre-show conversations with Elon, not the ones just on YouTube, but the ones we had earlier today. We might have a couple interesting nuggets of wisdom from some other folks. We'll get there when we get there. That might make you think about maximizing your schedules just a little bit differently than you have so far.
Yeah, so if people have no idea what we're talking about this whole schedule thing, we'll get to in just a sec. First of all, Keeping Karlsson, very proudly presented by DobberHockey.com. It was such a pleasure to talk to Dobber himself last week for an episode. That was a really fun show. Also, it was a pleasure to talk to Victor Nuno about Calder candidates. It was awesome talking to Dom, as always, about all of his projections. We've been knocking out some banger shows for the past little while. So if you are just catching up now, like, go back, check the backlog. They're all still there. They're all still very timely and relevant. So, subscribe on wherever you get your podcasts. And yeah, Brian, we have a really fun episode planned for today. Like you were saying, planned for today. Should we also do quickly talk about Cupful or anything? Do you want to make any announcements before we dive into the content? Planned for today. Of course, we are on the heels, Brian, of the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League draft starting in like 5 days from now. It's crazy how the time has passed. And that means if that league has started, probably a lot of people's leagues are thinking of starting their drafts, or maybe have already drafted so far. But yeah, as far as our league goes, maybe before we get into the content, really quick final plug here, because we're like pretty much you've missed the deadline if you haven't signed up yet, but we have a wait list going. And I still think there's a decent chance that if you sign up like now, you could get a team. Like obviously we'll just need like 14 new people to sign up and we can make a new division before Friday. Also, if you sign up and join the wait list and you don't get a team, there's always, unfortunately, we have like 600 plus people in this league. There's going to be a couple people who have to bail early on. So you might be able to take over a team pretty quickly. So yeah, like this is a league that we've been putting a ton of work into. I think we've been having a lot of fun in the Discord where the past couple of weeks, like learning our draft positions in a really fun way with a bunch of football players racing across the screen. We've been getting into all these different chats. People are starting to prep. I'm very excited for it. So yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about, check out kkupfl.com about our awesome league that we've been putting all of our time and effort into. There have been no light days, Brian, in the lead up to Cupful.
Oh my gosh. And shout out to Workhorse Kevin Hebert, our Cupful coordinator and automation chief executive, who's been knocking it out of the park. Usually we shout him out at the end of the show, but he always deserves it. We couldn't do what we're doing without him. So thanks to Kevin. And Elon lied just now. He said this is like the final reminder we'll give you. We're going to remind you like constantly, just so you know. Like we'll make new divisions for as long as we can, but like you said, I hope we can make another. We just need 14. Actually, I think we just need 10 more signups to open a new division. I think that
as we stand now. Yeah. After this, we're not doing another show though till like next Sunday, so we might by then it might be too late. But we'll see. But yeah,
slow draft start on September 22nd, but we can always start one a little later. Schedule a live draft. We will accommodate. If you want to play, we'll find a place for you up to a reasonable limit, and then you can like join the wait list to take over a team. But this is already more than Elon wanted to talk about it. kkupfl.com.
Yeah. Okay. But with that, Brian, let's get into the content for today. So like we said, so I guess some background. Well, there's a lot of things to talk about because I mentioned Matchup Maximizer. For those of you who are joining just this season, I was doing a show last season where every week I would look at the next week's schedule and talk about like which teams have good schedules and bad schedules. And if you're thinking like, what are you even talking about with the schedules? Let's take a step back and talk about why we care about the NHL schedule. Because maybe you're thinking to yourself, hey, every team's going to play 82 games. Why does it matter who I draft? I'm going to draft a player that if they stay healthy, they're going to play 82 games, right? So it shouldn't matter. But of course, not all schedules are created equal. And I'm talking specifically for head-to-head leagues, right? These leagues where every week you're having a matchup. And the end of the matchup is going to be a winner and a loser. And most leagues like that don't have a maximum for the number of games played for the week. Like in Cupful, if you could figure out a way to get more games than your opponent, like that's totally allowed. And it's like based on obviously the, how many games the players on your team are playing in a given week. And, obviously every team is going to have some weeks with a lot, some weeks with a few, it's all going to average out in the end. Cause like I said, every team's going to play 82 games, but there is another thing that you have to keep in mind, which is that in Cupful, at least, and in a lot of fantasy leagues, we have bench spots, right? So we have, for example, 2 centers, 2 left wing, 2 right wing, 4 defense, 2 utility spots, which are basically you could put a forward or a defenseman. Then we have 4 bench. Oh, and then 2 goalies. Okay, forget about the goalies for now. But basically, these 4 bench spots are like more players that you have on your team. But like if they're on your bench, the points that they get on a day like don't count for you. And so obviously for a light day, on a day when like only like 8 teams in the NHL are playing, anyone on your fantasy team is going to be able to get into your roster, right? Because there's no chance that they'll all be playing. But like on a busy day, like if you look at the NHL schedule, which starts, by the way, on October 10th, so exciting. But on the Saturday, October 14th, 28 NHL teams are playing. Every single team is playing except for New Jersey, Arizona, Washington, and Dallas. Okay. So that means that if you have let's say you have 12 forwards. Okay. Let's say you have or 8 forwards. Say you have 8 forwards. So 2 centers, 2 left wing, 2 right wing, and then those 2 util spots. Let's say they're forwards. Okay. So if you have 8 forwards and then, say you have 12 forwards. Okay. So the 2 center, 2 left wing, 2 right wing. Let's say you also have 2 utils. And then let's say you have 4 forwards on your bench also. So you have 12 forwards overall for only 8 possible forward spots. If you have like 11 of those forwards playing on that day, you're going to have to make a sit start decision, right? And you're going to have to sit 3 of those forwards, lose those games. But imagine if you had like 5 forwards on your team or 4 forwards on your team from like those teams I just said, New Jersey, Arizona, whatever. Like New Jersey's playing on Friday. So you would get the games from that New Jersey guy on Friday, and you'd still get all your forward games on Saturday. So hopefully I'm making it clear what I'm saying is like, if you have players playing on light days, you can get more games played because you're going to have fewer players benched on the busy days. And instead you're going to get their games on those light days where you could fit them in. So that's going to be the general concept we're going to be talking about today. And I'll get more into it, but yeah, just quick summary. Light days means more games played because of too many conflicts on the busy days. Brian, did I explain that okay, do you think?
I think that makes sense. I mean, like, yeah, it's really intuitive. That was a really good, thorough explanation. But basically, the more teams that are playing, the fewer roster spots you have. So you don't want guys sitting on the bench. And that's why we maximize our rosters.
Yeah, that's pretty much. That was the idea of matchup maximizer. So you want to obviously on a given week, you want to be looking at teams that play a lot of games. But like on a given week, if let's say I say, oh, this team's playing 4 times, you definitely want to add a player from that team. And then if you realize your roster's already full for 3 of those days, doesn't help you, right? Okay. But looking at the whole season, because now we're going into our fantasy drafts, right? So we're not talking week to week. You might be thinking like matchup maximizers for when the season starts. Tell me who's playing on week 1. Maybe I could use my last couple draft picks to look into that, which we will get to on this episode. But I was talking to one of our patrons, Tacos Overload, over on the Discord. His real name's Patrick. Really smart person. Wait. Tacos Overflow over on the Discord. Really smart guy. His real name's Patrick. And he's been telling me, and I feel a little bit like I don't want to give this up because I think he's right. And I think there's a lot of benefit to drafting for schedules and particularly players playing more on light days. And if you think of it, the logic is pretty sound, right? Like if you have a player that's going to play more light days for the whole season, that means you're going to have fewer of these conflicts like all throughout, which means on average, you're going to be getting more games played. And at the end of the day, if you get more games played than your opponents on a given week of head-to-head, you have a better chance to win. I actually asked Brian, you were talking about workhorse Kevin Hebert, who's been doing all this stuff for Cupful. Even still, he still had time also to generate a spreadsheet for me for this episode. He was looking at the data from the last few seasons of Cupful, and we were looking at the winning percentage of managers in head-to-head matchups, depending on the games played differential between the 2 managers. Okay, so it turns out like you're at a huge disadvantage if you have a games played differential. Like it looked like obviously if it was 0-0, like obviously if it was even, then both managers had a 50% chance of winning on average. Like I'm talking about, we're looking at the past data, right? So obviously there's 2 managers playing against each other. So one of them won and one of them lost. So that's 50%. But then you might think, okay, if it's the people who had like 1 game in advance, like how much could that really affect it? It actually the matchups where a manager had one extra game than their opponent, that already brought them up to winning 54.7% of the matchups. So already like you're getting up to 54, and that's just one game. 2-game advantage, 57%. Like get up to 5-game advantage, 64% of the managers who had a matchup in a week where they had a 5-game advantage, 64% of them won that matchup. So obviously it does depend on your players, and you could have like Tage Thompson on a week where he's scoring like 4 goals every game, and you're going to be able to make up that disparity. But on average, once you're getting like 5+, like above or below, that really is going to affect your chances of winning those matchups.
Yeah, well, even like at the baseline level, you might average 3.5 fantasy points a game, like on the low end from your streamers. So that's like another 15, 20 points that are just sitting there on the table to be had. And there's just a couple things I want to mention. The first is that some of that data might be skewed just because like the more active manager might be adding games and might have their team in like tip topper shape, right? So if I'm busy gaming the schedule and my opponent isn't, and I'm adding games every week, then it might also be that like I'm the better fantasy manager, more attentive fantasy manager, and that might skew that data a little, basically saying that the more active managers are more likely to win. So I think that's one way to read it. But also, even if 2 equally active managers, even like I remember looking at a similar chart that Kevin had made at our request like a few months back, and you mentioned it 5 games more, it was like a 60 something. I remember the thing starting to really tip at about a 3-game difference, which is not a big difference over a week, like over 55 60 games played. But boy, like yeah, it really does make a difference. And I also want to just like say one thing, which is, I'm a reluctant streamer. Okay, I do it because I have to. It's not my favorite way to play fantasy. All right, I don't love to have to maximize my games played. Maybe that's why I'm not a regular on Matchup Maximizer. So I once upon a time would have ideally, whenever I was down in schedule games, I'd be like, okay, fine, this week's a schedule loss, it'll even out next week. And then like I'd see the games play the next week, and I was like, wait, I'm still down. And the next week I'm still down. And I just like, even as someone who doesn't love to stream, I think it is a necessity. And like, you can't just like, I fell into the misguided assumption, especially in the cupful, that, hey, like over the course of the season, schedule luck will balance out and I'll be okay without needing to aggressively stream or at least put a bunch more thought into this. And I learned the hard way that was wrong. Like after like 2 months of being like losing the games played battle, even from the outset, like even on the Monday morning, from anywhere between like 2 to 10 games, it was really discouraging. So I think you're doing yourself a favor by just getting into the matchup, by trying to think about how you can maximize and get these games played, because this is not something that will balance itself out over the course of a season. You really do need to be proactive about it.
Yeah. And so I think there's 2 things here. And I guess this is becoming like, a strategy discussion. So hopefully people enjoy this. We'll get into some specific players in a little bit, but that we think will help you. But yeah, so Brian's talking about is like the streaming. So he's talking about like you're using your ad drops. Like clearly, if you think about it, going into a week, if you look at your roster for the next week and you have a player that's going to be on your bench like every single time they play, let's say that there's a player on your team that plays Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and you're already full on all those days and that player's on your bench, like clearly that's someone you should drop for someone who plays like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You're just like gaining 3 games just from that one ad, right? So, and when Brian was saying that sometimes he'd go into a week where he was already losing and it was Monday, they haven't even started making the streams yet. That might have been because maybe the manager was already looking at the previous week, like during the previous week, already making ads focused on the next week. So streaming is a big thing, like Brian's saying, and I think to be successful in Cupful, you need to be streaming at least somewhat to like maximize those games. Though we have had some exceptions, like one of our best players, Marcus, famously like doesn't stream that much, and he's been in tier 1 forever, and like was the President's Trophy winner last year, heavy favorite to win the whole thing until Ryan, of course, swooped in and became the ultimate champion. But what I'm talking about on this episode is actually, because we'll do Matchup Maximizer every week, I'll give you like your suggestions for how you can stream. But I think you can also give yourself an advantage by just drafting more players on light days. That's basically what Tacos Overflow and I we're talking about a lot over this past week is you could set yourself up so that you won't have many of those weeks where there's players on your team who are being benched for all of their games. Because if you already set it up where 4 players on your team play like a lot of light days, then you're going to start looking through your schedule week after week and realize you're not benching people. Then you're getting a games played advantage right from your draft. And then you can stream also to then add to that. So with that in mind, hopefully I've convinced the listener and Brian that we should look at teams that have good light day schedules and maybe bump up those players. And conversely, of course, look at the teams that have players with heavy schedules and maybe bump them down, or like obviously you could have some. Like Tampa Bay is the worst. I'll throw it out there right now. Tampa Bay has only so I set a threshold here. I'll give you just the parameters of how I've set this up. I'm looking at from the start of the season until March 17th, Brian, which is like the last day of the cupful regular season. Okay, so once you make the playoffs, it's a whole thing. Like I'm after coming 13th in my couple division last year, I'm not thinking about the playoffs right now. I'm just looking at all of the weeks that matter to help me get into the playoffs. Okay, so that's April 10th to March 17th, and I'm going to call a light day 8 games or fewer on the slate, which is what Dauber uses in the guide. And then I'm going to consider a heavy day as 24 games or higher. And then in between, we call it like a medium day. Okay. So those are the params. I actually have this all available for free if you want, like a cupful. No, all for free if you want. keepingkarlsson.com/tools will take you to this tools sheet that I made a while back, but I've added a new tab called full schedule grid, which has a grid of the schedule and some of this light day and heavy day calculation.
I heard you just shorten parameters to params. Don't think we didn't notice.
I mean, that's what we call it if you're a programmer, right?
Really?
No one has time. Yeah, we always say params.
Params. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
Talk like a programmer.
Yeah, you're a real like noob if you're saying parameters. Too long. But anyway, okay. So yeah, actually in Rails, the platform that I use, like for like the platform that my company uses, actually like a controller by default, the parameters that are passed in when you submit a form is in a variable called params. So that's not even my thing. This is like an actual coded into Ruby on Rails, which is a very popular web development platform. But okay.
Do you think you could deliver a whole Keeping Karlsson episode speaking in code?
Well, I don't. This is something in
Rails language.
Would say. Like again, like that means that's nonsense. What you just asked me, like I don't even know what that means. So. But I guess I can try to use more words that are keywords in the framework. But anyhow, well, as I was saying, so from October 10th to March 17th, and I said light days, 16 games, 16 teams playing or less, and heavy days at 24 teams playing or more. Okay, so Tampa Bay is the worst. They only have 12 light days over that stretch. And they have 36 heavy days. Compare that to like Anaheim, who has 32 light days in the same stretch of days. So we're taking Tampa Bay 12 and Anaheim 32. And if you're looking at heavy days, like days where like most of the league is playing, Tampa Bay has 36 of those days where they have a game along with most of the league, and Anaheim only 21. So we're talking a huge difference. So obviously I'm not saying to not draft Tampa guys. Like if you could get Kucherov or Stamkos or Braden Point, like I'm not saying to avoid these players, but just maybe you're going to want to pair them with some light day guys. Because if you like stack those 3 play, for example, let's say you're thinking, oh, it'd be awesome to just stack the Tampa top power play. Give me like Point, Kucherov, Stamkos, Hagel. Oh man, I'm crushing it. It's like you're going to be like full already on like most of those heavy days, and none of your other players will be able to play.
Right. Which brings me just to like another tangential point here. Like we always get like stacking questions. Like, is it like, it's always been a strategic element, right? Like, is it a good idea to stack, a bad idea to stack? And the general answer is like, it's okay. Like in the cupful, if I have 3 guys on my 18 skater roster or 18 man roster on the skater roster, then like that's okay. And that's a 1/6 of my roster. Like it's not an insignificant amount, but I had that last year with Pittsburgh and it worked out okay. But I think the better question is, how many busy nights does this stack have? And the more you stack, like Elon, you're talking about Tampa, the more you stack a busy team, the more you might be sort of painting yourself into a corner with how much mileage you can get out of your roster, because those are 3 pieces that are really entrenched on your roster, and all always playing on the same night. Like you could get 3 guys from 3 different teams playing mostly busy nights through the year, but at least they're on 3 different teams, and maybe sometimes their nights will misalign and they'll pace themselves out. But that I think that more than anything is the consideration to whether you stack or not. I think we did some work on this like earlier days of the podcast, and I think we came to the conclusion that like on an 18-man roster, 16 skaters, I guess, you have three is okay, 4 is pushing it, 2 is like negligible in terms of impact. So like stacking versus non-stacking, I'm agnostic, but then you really do have to take into account, like the schedule will be your answer to that question.
Yeah, and of course there's a difference between stacking. Yeah, and of course there's a difference between stacking, like for example, Stamkos, Hedman, and Vasilevsky. Like they're 3 different positions, so they're not going to conflict with each other as much as like, yeah, like I said, like Stamkos, Kucherov, and Braden Point. Now all of a sudden that's 3 of your forward spots, so it's becoming a little bit more difficult. And they may end up competing against each other, and especially if you were stacking like players at the same position, that would make things even more tricky. So yeah, it's a tough consideration. Of course, to take a total tangent, because why not? Since you're talking about stacking, I think the reason people like it is because you get multiple points like on the same goal, and it's just like such an awesome feeling. Like if you have like, you know, McDavid,
It feels
and
so
Hyman
good.
and Bouchard, let's say there's all of a sudden a goal, McDavid from Hyman and Bouchard, and you're like, oh my god, I just got like 15 points in one goal or whatever it is, you know. And so it feels great. Of course, at the same time, if you have like 3 players on different teams and one of them got a goal and 2 of them got assists, like at the end of the day, like you get the same number of points. And I think there are some considerations with stacking, like not schedule contingent, that could be like good or bad. Like maybe you're thinking, I drafted McDavid, I'm all in like on the Oilers, right? Like if McDavid doesn't do well, like I'm done anyways. Like I don't have a chance to win. So I might as well just like load up, because if McDavid does well, that probably means Bouchard's going to do well. That probably means Hyman's going to do well. So that's one way to think of it, as like a pro, I guess, you know, kind of an all or nothing. Like I'm either going to win or I'm going to come last place kind of thing. Another way to think of it on the other side, though, is like if you stack, let's say you stack that top line on Colorado, let's say mix it up. Let's say you've got Nichushkin, Rantanen, and McKinnon. Let's say we're confident that's the top line. Let's say McKinnon gets injured. All of a sudden, like 3 of your players take a hit, theoretically, right? Like, because now you, first of all, you have McKinnon gone, and now Rantanen. I mean, that's not really a good example, because actually Rantanen does pretty well even when McKinnon is injured. But say it was one of those cases where you're stacking someone that is kind of dependent on their line mate, then now you have like a double hit if one of them gets injured. So lots of interesting considerations with stacking, I think, pros and cons. But I think at the end of the day, if you're hamstringing yourself in terms of the schedule, then probably that's not the best idea, like Brian said.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that's the bottom line. I've been up against a couple powerhouses in the upper tiers of like a cupful, like who stacked, and one, like I got obliterated by them because of that stack. But I also think that maybe there is a bit of a, like, you know, like it's a misattribution, you know, like you're getting all these points, but you might see something there that you wouldn't see if those same points were coming from guys on 3 different teams. It just hits you harder, and you might not be playing against them when they're weak. Anyway, that's there's the stacking. Did we define stacking? It's when you, just in case anyone's wondering, when you get 2 or 3 guys from the same team. I think it was implied.
Hopefully. Otherwise, that would be very confusing for people.
Otherwise, like, you can restart the conversation now. Rewind 4 minutes.
Yeah. I guess one more piece of theory. This is like kind of like we're doing theory first, and then we'll do practice later of actually talking about what the players are that we recommend and don't recommend. But one more piece of theory with regards to the heavy and light days is one thing that I'm like mulling around in my head is, you know how like in Cupful, for example, we have 4 defenseman spots. And on average, defensemen get fewer fantasy points than forwards. But at the same time, you still feel like you need to get some defensemen, because theoretically we allow you to draft. You could draft all forwards, right? You don't need to draft any defensemen. The problem is then, like, you know, on those busy days, you're going to have forwards on your bench with no one playing in those D spots. So you would think like it would have been better if you just had a couple defensemen that you can play rather than just missing out on those games. So that would be another reason, by the way. Let's say you wanted to like not have to have so many defensemen, because in the past I've like tended to draft even like 4, but often like 5 defensemen, because I found like if I have 5 defensemen, then I'm probably going to get like games from all of my players, and that's good. You know, I didn't like the idea of having an empty like defense spot on a day, even though like I have forwards on the bench who are playing. So another reason to draft players with more light days is then you might be able to afford to like not have as many defensemen. Like if you have a lot of forwards that play on the light days, so you're not going to get into those situations where you're having to bench a lot of forwards on busy days. And maybe you could even get away with having only 3 defensemen on your team, you know, and an extra forward in a bench spot. So that's another reason why I think this like heavy and light day thing when you're drafting is worth considering, because maybe then, because why waste spot, especially once like all the good defensemen are gone, you know, and you're late in the draft and you're deciding between like, I could take Brock Besser, who I think is the best forward out there, or I could take like Philip Hronek, who I think is the best defenseman out there. And like most people would say, when I'm going to a Canucks game next year, I'm going to expect Besser to probably get more points than Hronek on a given day. But a lot of people might draft Hronek just because they're trying to fill that last D spot. So wouldn't it be nice to, you know, have the luxury of being able to just take the player that you think is going to get the most points versus, you know, having to fill those spots. So that's another reason to consider drafting more light day guys than heavy day guys. So with that, Brian, I think that's all the theory I want to throw out there for heavy and light days. Anything else you want to talk about, like, you know, strategic wise, before we actually talk about which teams have the most heavy and light days and talk about some of their players?
I mean, that's a really loaded question, but you know what? I will just put this out there. If anyone has like overall strategy questions for us, we have like, look for our fantasy hockey. Like we've done this in the preseason a lot over the years, if you look through our archives, but also, you know, have to like, you could also like send us a, like, if you're on our Discord server, send us a, like, put it in the episode discussion channel, or like add us on Twitter with your strategy questions. And if they're enough, maybe we can make a whole app out of it. I think for this one, Elon, focusing as much on the schedule as possible, doing what it says on the tin is what we should do.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So with that, Brian, how about we take a quick break? And then when we come back, we're going to talk about some of these teams with those nice light day schedules. Okay, so we'll be back in just a sec. All right, we are back, Brian. And I think I already said this before, the NHL team with the most light days. And again, just for my purposes here, and again, I have a spreadsheet here where you can change the params as much as you want. I'm using like the cupful regular season, not the playoffs. And I'm using 16 teams playing or fewer as my light day threshold. And Anaheim wins the day in terms of the team with the most light day games. So you have the best chance, if you have Anaheim players, of getting like all of their games in and being able to, you know, not be filling your busy days. All the stuff we talked about before the break. So Anaheim 32 light days compared to Tampa Bay 12, like I said before. So then we have the next best are Chicago, New Jersey, and Washington with 30. So very close. Then you get to like the Rangers, Minnesota. So the Rangers have 28. Then you have Minnesota, LA, Colorado with 27. And then we're going to get sort of, the middle is like around 23, right? So though like Edmonton and Detroit are like right there in the middle, not bad, not good. And then you start getting into the teams that are below average. But yeah, let's focus on those top teams. Let's start with Anaheim. Okay, Brian, because like I think clearly the big names are like Zegras and Terry. Like the problem is Anaheim's always had great light day schedules, but they've always like kind of stunk. And there's never been like, it's been almost like a waste. It felt like I don't want to, it's too bad that like I see this team has this advantage, but there's no one on the team I really want. I guess back in the day with Getzlaf and Perry, that made them good. But now we've got the new wave, the youth movement over in Anaheim, and some older guys. I don't know. They signed Killorn. I don't know if that means you're going to now say we want Killorn, but maybe starting with like Zegras and Terry. Like, I'm just curious to get your general sense of these guys, like, you know, where they've been mocked at, like what we're expecting from them, to just see like how worth they are drafting, assuming we want to take advantage of that light day schedule.
Okay, sure. So how about we start with, let's do one at a time here, Elon. So Trevor Zegras going 109th overall. And just to situate him, I think whenever I give someone's mock, I will name the other, like I'll go by forward or defenseman who are going closest to him. So Zegras is coming right after Kuzmenko, McCann, Marchessault, and Lindholm, to situate him there. And ahead of Bo Horvat, Troy Terry, teammate, Mark Stone, and Chris Kreider. All right. So it's an interesting group of players to be talking about. Like, even just on that, I think I like the guys going after him, maybe slightly more than the ones who are going before Trevor Zegras. But let's focus on Zegras, who last year paced for 66 points in his second full season in the NHL, which is exactly what he did in his first full season. Well, he paced for 67 points in his first full season, but his numbers mirror his 2 full seasons for Trevor Zegras mirror each other very, very closely. Now he's heading into his age 22 season. And of course, the question is, can he do more than 65, just north of 65 points? And my thinking is yes. Like last year, Zegras got a little bump in ice time by a minute per game, and it all came at 5-on-5, which is nice to see. You want to see a player getting, like, a young player being trusted with more responsibility. And like, you could also make the argument that, like, who else is Anaheim going to play? And I'm going to make the same argument now. Who else is Anaheim going to play? Like, this is a thin roster especially for a team that, like, 2 or 3 years ago seemed like they were building up their youth. Like Elon, you said youth. Well, like Elon, you said youth movement when you were talking about them, but I think they had like a false start on their youth movement, and like a lot of guys who were supposed to turn into something didn't. So really, right now they have Zegras, Terry, and Henrique on presumably the top line. And then the second line is like, can look like a third line. You've got, it's an opportunity line, I guess. Right now you're thinking, like, I guess there's Vetrano, Strome, Killorn, McTavish is in the mix, and Leo Karlsson is, of course, the X factor in all of this, as somebody who could come in and surprise. I guess the question for me about Leo Karlsson is, can he really surprise without anybody else on his line? And we also know the Ducks have split Zegras and Terry in the past. So all of this will help determine exactly what we can expect from the team as a whole. But from Zegras specifically, I think you can expect another year of growth. Like, I'm looking at his numbers from last year. He pretty much held steady from his rookie season. One thing that I noticed kind of stands out to me is that at 5-on-5, Zegras like had a similar point scoring race. Like it was down a little, but where he really fell off in the most notable way was in his expected goals rate. So the shots that Zegras was getting were not as dangerous as they had been the year prior. And that's something I'd like to see go in the other direction. It very well could, right? Zegras has been asked to do probably, I'm sure, a lot different and grow his game. Like this is the time, right, to mess with Trevor Zegras' game a bit and try and develop him so that he's ready to go when the Ducks are. But offhand, Elon, I'm looking at Zegras as like a 65-point player, again with upside for more, but I don't know how much more, just given how thin the Ducks roster is. But he is compelling, knowing that he has all these off days. And like when I look at him side by side, Kuzmenko, who like is like Zegras is listed as center, right? And Kuzmenko, like all the guys I named before him are not, and I think that's probably one of the reasons he's behind them. But when I look at Zegras versus Kuzmenko, they're basically going at the same spot, and that's probably just position. But if I'm looking at, I guess maybe I should focus on like center only eligible players. He's coming in behind Elias Lindholm and Mark Scheifele as the nearest center only player to me to take him ahead of those guys. I'm wondering, Elon, on what you tell me about Calgary's schedule, like heavy day schedule. If there's a big difference there, then I might consider Zegras closer to even with Lindholm. But outside of that, I'm not so sure that I would. So as great as Zegras is, and as great as we hope for him to be, I don't know that this is the year that's going to be the big breakout. But of course, it's nice to have a little more roster flexibility if you're picking a tiebreak, which could be a theme through the episode tonight. And then you've got Troy Terry, who's heading into his age 26 season. He just turned 26, which is really exciting. Well, I don't know if that's really exciting, but like I feel like he's in his prime. 2 low 70-point seasons in a row, and like Zegras, Terry basically mirrored. Like he got his points very similar ways the last 2 seasons. Like power play output similar, shooting output similar. One thing that happened for Terry is that this past season, his shooting percentage regressed. In Terry's first like breakout season in 21-22, he shot almost 20%. Last year, he went down to shooting just 12%, which is where we probably would expect him to be based on his career output so far. But he still managed the same point pace which is heartening, that he could still manage that he could find other ways to produce. And I bet having like a developing Trevor Zegras round and also another minute of ice time per night, a lot of that on the power play actually helps offset some of that shooting regression that he saw last year. And I don't know, Elon, it's going to be kind of boring, I guess, but I'm going to call Troy Terry as somebody I expect to do roughly the same thing as he did last year. He's going 110th overall. So the wingers above him are Kuzmenko and McCann and Marchessault, and the wingers below him are Mark Stone, Chris Kreider, Ricard Raquel. And I think I could be convinced to move Troy Terry up above Kuzmenko, McCann, and Marchessault if he's going to offer me a whole lot of schedule flexibility that those guys don't. The wingers above that, or the winger eligible guys, are Pierre-Luc Dubois and Drake Batherson, and that's where I think I would pause. I would not put Terry above those guys because I think they both have point per game pace potential. But you tell me, Elon. I don't know if I'm not giving enough heft to the idea of maximizing schedule games right off the top. Like I guess what we have to figure out is how many points or fantasy points or whatever are we willing to trade off for how many extra light days, you know? And I don't know quite that I've figured out that formula in my head aside from sort of just gutting it out.
Yeah, so Tacos Overflow, aka Patrick, has like developed a formula that I think he's still working on it. I don't know. He sort of told me, I don't think I want to get into that. Like I haven't really like thought it through fully, but he was thinking it's like could get pretty significant, like the number of points you're going to add to these players. But I think the main thing was just to get your take on these guys in general, and then like I guess the listeners can decide, like, you know, now that we get your general sense on Zegras and Terry, like, you know, how much, you know, extra they want to give them because of the great schedules that they have. I will say with Trevor Zegras, I could see him just being better because it just seems like, I don't know, I want to change a bit, Brian. Like, I feel like just in general, I've been very much like not believing in like young players like getting better, or not like I haven't believed in young players getting better, but I haven't like as much as I think I should. You know, like I didn't expect Tim Stützle to like have, you know, I was probably like thinking like, Stützle will probably be like a little better than his rookie season. Then he like took off last year, you know, like there's been a lot of players like that, like Natchez came out of nowhere. Like, I don't know, there's like, I feel like, and Trevor Zegras is like a stud. Yeah. Like everyone talks about him as like this huge star, like, you know, Dom gave him a plus for whatever it's worth in his, so, you know, his model like generated an amount which already, like when we talked to Dom, right, he was saying that his model already accounts for like players who are young and like entering their prime to like get a boost anyways and not only use their previous numbers. And then he gave Zegras a boost on top of that. So I think I would as well. Like I know what you're saying about like the players around him are going to make it hard, blah blah blah, but I think that if he was able to already be pretty impactful last year, I feel like there's a really good chance Zegras is like a 75-ish point player this year. And like same with Troy Terry.
Yeah. So with Zegras, like you know what, Elon, I think you're right. Like one piece of like we got a lot of good episode feedback on the last show that we did with Dom, which was great. And one thing Dom's model does is it really does help bump guys up who are like at the right part of an aging curve and bumps guys down who are at the wrong part of the aging curve. And it probably is more flexible that way than I tend to be in like my more rigid thinking. Like when a player has two nearly 70 point, like 65, 70 point seasons under their belt, like Zegras does, and is still going into their age 22 season, you know, this is something I want to get better at this season. And that someone in our Discord server kind of called me out on, and rightfully so. So I am with you, Elon. I shouldn't say I expect the same from Trevor Zegras. I guess maybe what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to like get really fancy and call my shot and be like, no, this isn't going to be the year. It's going to be next year. But really, I don't know. And like, there's not really a well, there are models out there, but no one can predict like how exactly a player is going to ride a development curve. But based on the talent we've already seen from Trevor Zegras, and that he's heading into a season where, you know, he's just on the doorstep of his prime, I don't think it's unreasonable. You're right. So I'm going to join you and expecting 70 points from Trevor Zegras, even if the team around him doesn't inspire a whole lot of confidence. It hasn't the last couple of years, and that hasn't really seemed to bother him. Like you said, there's a pretty, I think you said it's really likely in your mind, or there's a really good chance he hits 75. I think that like, it's definitely a possibility, but I don't know that I'd say it's a really likely thing, but I think 70 is a decent benchmark. And Troy Terry is, I don't know where he fits on the aging curve, right? Like he should be plateauing, basically, based on the usual prime numbers. And he's actually about to exit his prime. But of course, the team around him is getting better, and we have to account for that. It's crazy to think that this is like Troy Terry's coming up on his 6th NHL season. If you include his first one where he only played 33 games back in 2018-19, like he had 3 seasons of irrelevance before bursting onto the scene in 21-22, and basically doubled his shot output per night. And also last year he finally got that power play deployment. So I don't know if anyone is fully adjusted and fully respected Troy Terry for what he does. There might be value there for him because of that. And so Elon, I'm joining you in bumping up Trevor Zegras, and I'm going to try and be more sensitive to age. But I will at least say at Troy Terry's age, that's not necessarily a moment where we're going to see a player take the next step at age 26.
Right. But if he plays with Zegras who's taking a step, then obviously that would help. But yeah, okay. I guess, Brian, now we just spent like 10 minutes on these two ducks. So I guess probably we should, moving forward, try to get more. I just want to talk to you forever, right? That's an interesting thing. But I guess we should probably do a bit more quantity over quality, just because there's a lot of interesting teams I want to get to. But just sticking with Anaheim quickly, is there anyone else? Okay, I'm not including defense, and I know we talked about maybe like Mintyukov or Zellweger could come in, but like I'm kind of focusing on forwards, because like I said before, Brian, I'm kind of going to aim to only draft 3 or maybe 4 defensemen, but like, so then it doesn't matter about light days, because I'm only going to, there's never going to be conflict, because I'm not going to go over. So I'm really focused on forwards, and we'll talk about goalies at the end of the day. Is there any other forward? Like, I guess like to me, it's like Mason McTavish is the other one who's really exciting. And I think like this is the kind of guy who, if he has a season like last year, then obviously you're probably not going to want to hold on, though he did heat up right at the end. And who knows, he's another of a like super high pedigree player that I'd love to get pretty late, especially with the great schedule. And, obviously be ready to drop if it's not working out. But like, if you can get it with a pretty late pick of Mason McTavish, that's the kind of player that, not like win you leagues, but like you want to hit on those late picks. And why not also make it someone with a great schedule? So McTavish is definitely someone. And but unfortunately, we host this podcast, and now all my division, like one of my division mates is even in the chat here right now, Pete. So I'm giving away too much. But this is the lot in life we've chosen. But yeah, McTavish is definitely someone that I have high on my list, and I think listeners should as well.
Sure. Yeah. Like he could have good deployment, right? Which would help. But if he's not on the top line, then it is kind of a black hole. And if Terry and Zegras are playing together, McTavish last year had like a couple times when he was like relevant for a week, and then it was really quiet the rest of the time. And one thing that I haven't seen totally settle with McTavish is whether or not he's a shooter. Like there are plenty of nights where he took 3 or 4 shots, but there were just as many shots where he took just as many nights where he took between 0 and 2 shots. More of those nights. There were 50 nights where McTavish took 0 to 2 shots, and 30 nights roughly where he took 3 or more. But I wonder if he can shift the balance in that a little. Like obviously the potential and capacity to have big shot nights is there. I don't know if it's a matter of how much McTavish is permitted to do by his coach. That's a big question for me about McTavish. And then Elon, we already mentioned Leo Karlsson, who we're not sure about, but finally Alex Killorn. He was relevant on Tampa just because of his power play deployment, and I don't know the Anaheim power play will be quite as deadly as the Tampa power play was.
Not quite as.
Yeah, but if Killorn can cement himself on the top power play unit, then it at least makes him a good stream. But I don't think he's someone who I'm like, oh yeah, great schedule, Alex Killorn. Like I'm sneaking you into my roster, because he's not someone that I feel confident I would be carrying, like no doubt through the season if he goes cold for any length of time.
Yeah, I mean, like I agree with you, but also at the same time, it's like, if Anaheim's going to have all these weeks where they have off days and Alex Killorn is going to be like the number 1 streaming target anyways, maybe you just hold him, and then you don't have to let other people stream him, and then you could stream other people. But yeah, we'll see how
counterpoint. Counterpoint to that is like, yeah, you go ahead and grab him because he's the best streaming target anyway, but you're holding him there's an opportunity cost, right? Mm-hmm. By not trying to move him out. Like if he starts slower, has a few bad games, and you're like, okay, well, he still has a good schedule, like a really good schedule the next couple of weeks. You might be missing out on the real next big thing.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'd rather stream out someone who like isn't even getting into my lineup, but obviously, yeah, it depends how you draft and how things go. Maybe draft like a Pacioretty. Here's the best strategy: like draft some injured reserve eligible players. Then that helps you stream really easily to get the season started. But yeah, Killorn's right at that level for me. Like even last year, like he was 4.1 a couple points per game. My threshold's always been around 4 for forwards, where I'm like not really that interested if they're less than 4. So he was already like kind of right there. So we'll see if he can be better. But yeah, the game, yeah, this I'm still wrapping my head around how valuable it is to stream in or like draft these players with good schedules. So, anyways, let's move on to another team. Oh, one
Okay.
last thing, Brian.
I don't want to totally gloss over Adam Henrique. Like he 50-point pace last year, 59-point pace the year before, which is the best he's ever done, and probably a high watermark that I'm not sure he can totally reach again. But he's on average being drafted 251st in a couple mocks, and we have 252 draft picks. So like, is somebody right at the end? Like Killorn's going before him, but honestly, I feel like if Henrique is slotting in with Zegras and Terry, like if those are the lines we're seeing out of camp, then I would rather draft Henrique and see how he works out over the next couple of weeks. He's had some real good runs in the past couple of years.
Yeah, fair. Definitely, I think we're in agreement that Mason McTavish is the third duck forward you draft because the upside is so much higher than what you're ever going to see from Henrique and Killorn, who are always just going to be like, do I hold him? Oh, it's fine. He's doing okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to some other teams. Okay. So like I said, Chicago, New Jersey, and Washington each have 30 light days over the season, the couple regular season, which is still like really good. And actually New Jersey, I'm just going to point out, if I change it to just look at like October and November, like just for the first couple weeks of the season, New Jersey is like the highest. They're even more than Anaheim. Like we're looking at like a ton of light days. So feels, I guess, over the course of the season, like you want to do well. You have, week 1 is worth as much as the week at the end, but you always want to get off to a strong start. So like if you draft New Jersey guys, and the nice thing about New Jersey also is they're freaking New Jersey. They're loaded. There's like so many good players. So it's like if we take the same amount of time, Brian, talking about each New Jersey player as we have for these Anaheim guys, the show's going to be over.
Yeah, I feel like we never really dig into Terry and Zegras. They're always just like, yeah, they're good, but they're not always quite as good as we hope. New Jersey, we don't need to dig deep, right? I think, how about we just look at like some of their ADPs, and then we'll see if, knowing that they have a better schedule than most,
sure,
bumps them up. So Jack Hughes, all right, he's going on average 9th overall behind Nikita Kucherov, Matthew Tkachuk, Mikko Rantanen, and David Pastrnak. Do you move him up? I mean, Kucherov, you talked about on Tampa, is having one of the worst the heaviest schedule. The biggest. We need better words for this, Elon. I don't know if we can coin any new terms.
Heavy and light. Why not?
I want one word.
Busy and
busiest, yeah,
and light.
Sketchiest schedules.
Okay.
I don't know. That's not that we've done better in the history of our program. Okay, but Hughes behind Kucherov, just barely. They're essentially tied. All right, in mocks, and actually lately the trend is that Hughes is trending up and Kucherov is trending just after Hughes. But Elon, the schedule to me tips the scales towards Jack Hughes, doesn't it?
Yeah, the schedule. I also might just like Jack Hughes better. Like I just really believe in Jack Hughes, and I like Kucherov a lot, of course. It's also nice that Hughes has center left wing on Yahoo, so you're not just taking a straight C. Though again, I should remind people, the whole idea behind this theory is, how normally you're like, oh, I already have like 3 centers. Do I really want a 4th center? So my 2 util spots will also be centers. But it's like, if you're taking players with a lot of light day games, and it doesn't affect you as much because you'll be able to fit them in and all that. Maybe you could even afford to have 5 centers where normally you would never be able to play all of them on the same day. But if you have Zegras and Nico Hischier and I don't know, I'm trying to think, Dylan Strome, I don't know, I'm trying to think of all those centers, the main centers on these teams with light days. You probably won't have many conflicts, which means that you'll be A-okay. So that's something to consider also in terms of the position eligibility. Remember how I said before, Brian, that by taking players with light day games, you're going to give yourself an advantage where maybe you don't have to draft as many defensemen. I think you can make the exact same argument that now you can draft maybe more centers than you'd normally be comfortable with. So throwing that out there.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
When we talked about mock drafting with Trev and Mason, like that was one of my big takeaways is like there is value in centers. Like you don't have to be afraid of overloading at one position, or like going in order of position. Although we talked with Dom a few days ago about how thin right wing is and how you might want to take care of that too. Okay. Timo Meyer, Elon, speaking of right wing, I think he actually just got dual eligible. Yahoo just updated their eligibilities again. And I think Timo is now dual eligible on both wings. And so he's coming in 21st overall behind Stützle, Marner, and Ovechkin, and ahead of JT Miller. I'm just looking at winger eligible. JT Miller, William Nylander, Kyle Connor, and Jake Gensel. So Timo Meyer obviously like struggled so far as a Devil, but I've mentioned that like he actually looks really like he struggled on the score sheet, but he seems as effective as ever on the ice. So I mean, like that's pretty formidable, Elon, to try and pop him up above Stützle, Marner, and Ovechkin. I don't think I would do it. Given his, I mean, Ovechkin has a great schedule too. You haven't really gotten to Toronto and Ottawa yet and how they rank in terms of how busy they're going to be. But Timo Meyer, I think I'd still take Stützle and Marner ahead of him. But like, again, like you and Tacos Overflow have made me think like so hard about like, am I wrong to think this way? And like I said, I'm still working out exactly how I'm going to ingest this information and how it'll impact my draft. And I'm really going off hunch and gut. But my gut right now says I still would not bump Meyer up above those guys.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Like, honestly, I don't think we need to like give the answer here. Like, we're sharing some names, we're throwing some things out there. Clearly, Meyer is someone that becomes exciting because he's on New Jersey, just like all these guys. Hischier becomes exciting, even though he's center only. And you might be like, oh, I bumped him down because he's center only. So there's a reason now. Like, New Jersey has a great schedule. Like you said, Washington has a good schedule. So Timo Meyer versus Ovechkin, you don't really have to worry about schedule there. I really don't know what to do about Ovechkin. This is like obviously not a schedule thing. It's like, I'm just gonna throw out a theory with Ovechkin that is like totally just me making it up. And sometimes you make up a story for yourself to make someone seem better, and then the season starts and it doesn't like work out at all. But like, I know a lot of people are like worried about Washington and like how they're not going to be as good this season. Their power play looks like it might be in trouble. Like Dom was bringing it up with the whole John Karlsson discussion, which was really fun in the last episode. I do wonder, but Brian, tell me how crazy this is. But like, what if like Washington sucks next year and they're like not as good? And so then what if then they're like, well, what do we have to play for? Like, let's just focus all of our resources on Ovechkin breaking the goals record. Like once they realize they're not making the playoffs, like because a lot of people are worried that Washington's not going to be good. So what if they then are just like, okay, just dish to Ovechkin every chance you get. Ovi, take low percentage shots. Who knows? Maybe some will go in. Like, what if all of a sudden Ovechkin like shoots more and like scores more because the team is more focused on getting him goals rather than like winning games? Like, could it be? Is that the craziest thought ever, that it might be good for Ovi if Washington sucks?
Maybe, but like I feel like if they just decide to tank as a team and be like, let's feed Ovi.
I'm not saying they decide to tank. I'm saying more like people are worried. Like the people's argument against Ovi that I've heard is like Washington is not looking as good. And I am saying counterpoint is like, if Washington, I'm not, obviously they're going to try to win. Ovi's like he's a competitor. He's going to try to win games. But let's say it gets to a point where they're just like not a playoff team.
I understand.
Okay,
I'm not saying tanking from this. Like they decide that we're in the same scenario here. I just think if it's so freaking obvious that they're just feeding Ovi, like that's really easy to defend against, isn't it?
I guess
so. How much could that really help him?
And I guess already their strategy has always been to just feed Ovi all the time anyways. So maybe that's not that different. I don't know. Just a thought. I like the idea of Ovi being really good for another year just because, it's just, I like the idea of him beating the record. And also I do have 14th overall and seems like he'll be available and someone to consider for me in like a couple draft. But anyways, yeah. So Ovi versus Meyer is a tricky one because you have one on the up, one on the down. And it's just like, he's Ovi, but also he's like 37 years old or whatever he is. So at some point he's going to come down, and I would hate to like use a top pick on someone like the year they fall off. But on the other hand, he's Ovechkin. So who knows? But anyways, yeah. So we were talking New Jersey. So there's Meyer. I guess next time, assuming you're going to bring up like there's Hischier, there's Jesper Bratt. Like, these are all like high end guys. Who am I missing? Toffoli. Is there any other big name forward? Oh, Mercer. Mercer to me is like a McTavish, by the way. I'll just throw it out there. Like just how I said, like, and I think that you'll have to use a higher pick to get Dawson Mercer because he actually had a pretty good year last year, or at least a decent stretch. But yeah, again, like great schedule. and he could take off. So it's like another reason, like why not? Because I think with those late picks, once you're getting to considering like you're like, just for the example of the conversation, like, like we were talking about like Killorn or whatever, like once you're talking about these guys, like these are guys that are going to be available in free agency all year long. Once you like, why take a safe guy at the end of the draft? Like you might as well take a swing, and if not, it becomes a streamer spot. So yeah, Mercer, I like as a late guy. And yeah, the question is like Dom was actually really low on Toffoli because he thinks he's not going to get a lot of power play points. He has him down to like 50 something points. So I guess the question is how, if you believe Dom, but you do have that good schedule. So Toffoli will be an interesting one where maybe you bump up. Like maybe Brian, can you share that actually, the Toffoli ADP and who's being taken ahead of him? Maybe we could have that conversation.
I mean, after talking to Dom the other day, like Toffoli, like I'm cool. Like Dom is cool to Toffoli. Even and one of the big conversations with Dom was about John Karlsson, right? And like it was like a couple of points. John was still looking pretty good to me, even if he ended up being a 60-point player and not a 70-point player. But Dom's model and I definitely agree on Toffoli, or Dom's model and we all agree. Like Toffoli had a big drop in Dom's model this year based on cupful points because Dom is seeing fewer shots from Toffoli because he got to fire away on power play a lot, which he's arguably not going to get the opportunity to do in New Jersey. So right now Toffoli is being drafted behind Sam Reinhart, Joe Pavelski, Pavel Buchnevich, Jeff Skinner. Like it seems to me too high. Like Tyler Toffoli doesn't seem like he's in this class of player to me. And he's being drafted ahead of Val Nichushkin, Martin Necas, Drake Batherson, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and we're back down to Jonathan Marchessault again, approaching Trevor Zegras and Troy Terry territory. So Elon, like actually, I would say Toffoli is being mocked too high, even with his schedule advantage.
Yeah, fair. And New Jersey, though, is tempting, like I said, because they have that early advantage, just get off on the right foot. So he does become a little bit more appealing to me, but I hope that he falls. I hope that after the Dom conversation, he falls and I could get him like a little later. Because yeah, it would be hard to pass on like a Drake Batherson or like a Reinhardt or one of these guys you were just talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I would take Troy Terry, and then I would still want Troy Terry like a fair bit above Tyler Toffoli. And Terry right now is being mocked 20 spots below Tyler Toffoli.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I wonder how that'll translate to like actual drafts when people are really like, because maybe like mock drafts, a lot of people are still like just going based on last year's fantasy points per game, not putting too much thought into it, as opposed to the actual drafts where obviously people will want to really make the right choice. But okay, Brian, oh man, the time keeps on. Can we stop time, please? I want to talk about so many more things. Okay, Chicago. Again, so I said the four teams that are right at the top there are Anaheim, Chicago, New Jersey, and Washington. So we've talked New Jersey and Anaheim. Chicago, Bedard just had a hat trick in the first rookie game, which is like, I guess not a surprise. Like you would hope that in the all rookie game, he'll totally dominate, but still just like more reason to be excited and to salivate about this guy in his first season. We've talked about him like every episode. Like I talked about him with Dauber, with Dom, with Victor. Like I'm just doing Bedard every day, so we don't have to go crazy, but just Chicago also has an awesome schedule. So it's like another reason to reach for Bedard. So I know obviously there's all the reasons why you have to be a little bit wary about an 18-year-old, but I'm very excited, right? So I don't know exactly when you take the swing on him, but the schedule is fantastic for Connor Bedard, so that's going to help. And then also all these like periphery Chicago guys that can kind of get into our like our Mercer and McTavish thing. Like if we're thinking there's players that might have upside because of exposure to Bedard, like a Taylor Hall, maybe you bump him up a little bit. It all depends. Oh, Reichel. Dom mentioned that Reichel is like a good potential sleeper. So again, like I'm going to put Reichel right there actually with like a Mason McTavish and a Mercer because like, yeah, great schedule, potential to take off. Those are two great things for me. So those would be the guys that I'm looking at in Chicago. And then Brian, I'll also mention just Washington guys really quickly and then throw to you. Yeah, Washington, I guess like Ovechkin becomes again with a great schedule. Very appealing. And my crazy theory that they dish to him more, which you already kind of made me think like maybe that's silly. But yeah, then look at like a Dylan Strome, who I think is similar to, well, he's like worse than Zegras, but like if Dylan Strome's gonna be the top line center on Washington, which it seems like he will be, and he's center only, but like again, with a great schedule, you don't have to worry so much about center only. So maybe he's someone that's gonna fall because he's center, but that's actually going to be really good value because if he's top line, top power play now, seems like Kuznetsov's out the door. Seems like Backstrom isn't himself anymore. So it could be a great opportunity for a Dylan Strome.
Definitely. I wouldn't say like Kuznetsov's out the door until he's physically out the door, but he's definitely out of favor. And there's a half of a Nicholas Backstrom still in the lineup. So like that, there's a possibility to push Kuznetsov down. But Elon, I'm with you on Dylan Strome. I think he could be somebody that you could probably get fairly late. And he does have this benefit of having a great schedule too. As a center only eligible player, of course, like later in the draft, you might already have all your centers. But if you don't, he's going to 188th on average in our mocks behind the other center only eligible players above him are Sam Bennett, Pavel Zacha, Logan Couture, and behind him are Chandler Stevenson, Sean Couturier, and Barrett Hayton. And I don't know. I could be convinced to move Strome ahead of Bennett. Well, Bennett's got some peripheral help too, but I could consider Strome ahead of Couture and Zacha, especially in a points only league. Like a couple scoring will hurt Dylan Strome because he doesn't take a lot of shots, but definitely in a points only situation, I could see schedule being enough of a factor to push him up ahead of those guys. And Elon, just like someone I don't like, this is worth nothing. Okay.
I'm bracing myself for nothing.
I'm already like backing off of you. Okay, Anthony Mantha. I just want to check in.
Is he still in the league?
Yeah, he and I just want to check in about whether or not he's worth he's not. Okay. Great. Yes. Sometimes it's good to just like go back and double check that everything is where you think you'd left it with a guy. And,
I'm just looking up. I honestly thought he was like a free agent that didn't sign, but no, you're right. He has one more year left on his deal.
It's
you know what it is? He was dropped in my dynasty league, I think. And so that's why I was thinking like he's
now he ceases to exist. Okay, got it.
Because I didn't even want to add him, but yeah, it's because he's still making 5.7 next year.
You know, what's funny is like his underlying numbers aren't so different from those early ones that made us think there might be something to him. But again, if you never take the next step, then it doesn't really matter what like we saw potential, but potential was like not end up getting filled. Like, yeah, I could go into a couple reasons why maybe he was a 33-point pace player last year. He was a 70-point player in his pace for his last two seasons in Detroit, last two full seasons. Yeah, I guess I can't really get with this, especially on one hand, I'm like, oh, well, Washington might want to rely on him more. On the other, he's 29 years old and there's not okay. All right. He is exactly where I thought he was. That's all. Just checking assumptions. You got to do it sometimes. And then Elon,
I think
you
might not make the team. I'm just gonna throw it out there. That's my bold prediction. I think Anthony Mantha might get waived. But anyways, okay.
What?
I mean, last season they were already bumping him down to like 14 minutes a game. They have some guys coming up. I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, we don't need to talk about him anymore.
Is Joe Snively going to earn a spot ahead of Anthony Mantha?
Like, people talk about like Connor McMichael, maybe. I don't know. They who's that other guy that people like talk about?
I don't think Anthony Mantha is in like the 10th, 11th, or 12th forward spots. But I guess so we'll see. I guess it's possible. Okay. Chicago. Okay. I love when you just start naming young guys.
They signed to Sonny Milano.
Yeah,
that I don't know.
He's Anthony Mantha.
They have Max Pacioretty. They have Max Pacioretty once he's healthy.
Yeah. Okay, Chicago. What do we see here? I think you mentioned you got it. Elon, Connor Bedard, Taylor Hall, maybe Reichel, whoever the fourth forward might be on the power play. Like it could be Taylor Radish. I don't know if Andres Athanasiou. No, he'll never get reps with Bedard because he's not defensively capable at all, and I don't think you want to saddle Bedard with that. Yeah, I think that's I think we did it for Chicago and Washington.
Okay, and so I could keep going for a little bit. Like we do a couple more teams. I guess people get the gist here. Maybe I'll do some of the really bad ones, right? So Tampa Bay we mentioned is the worst. Then in terms of few light days, next up actually Montreal is pretty bad. They only have 16. Compared to again like Anaheim and Chicago like at 30, so almost double. So if you're thinking about like a Nick Suzuki versus a Dylan Strome, maybe that would be a reason to maybe want to like. Obviously, it's like the point. I expect Suzuki to get a few more points, but you're going to get a lot more games, especially if it's center where you're already loading up on centers. Again, that's where you really want to think about it. Like maybe you could really help yourself out a lot by at least if you're going to load up on centers that aren't like the most busy days of all teams. Because also if I look at heavy days, So I was looking at, when I say 16, that's like light days for Montreal. In terms of days where there's 24 or more teams playing, which, you know, like those crazy Saturdays, we all know this season, I'm pretty sure has more of those crazy Saturdays than usual. Like if you scroll, I just made a full schedule grid and I just like put like a little conditional formatting. And if you like kind of scroll through, like every Saturday is like bright red for like 28 teams playing, 30 teams playing, like 30, like there's so many of these days where it's like, if you have 5 centers, like you're not, one of them's going to be on the bench every single time. Right. So anyway, all that to say, a center on like a Montreal or Tampa Bay becomes a lot less appealing. Like obviously you're going to play that one, like Brayden Point. Obviously you're going to play him if you have him, but then you're bumping out like one of your other centers. So yeah, those are the teams that are not great. Also Nashville and Boston are teams with maybe the worst. Ottawa is actually there too, Brian, if we're talking about below average teams in terms of the schedule. So again, people maybe should just go, like, I don't think people need to be sitting and listening to this episode and like taking notes frantically, like keepingkarlsson.com/tools. Also Dauber has tools on frozen tools. Like there's a lot of people out there that have generated this stuff. But if you want mine, keepingkarlsson.com/tools, and you just make a copy and then you can play around and see which teams are bad. But maybe Brian, we could take a quick break. And then when we come back, I did want to talk another schedule thing beyond. There is something else to consider on the schedule besides just busy days and light days. So we'll get to maybe some other schedule considerations after. But any final things, Brian, you want to say about busy and light days before we move on, unfortunately?
No, I don't think so. Like I think you get the gist. And I don't know, Elon, just like, you know, I'm not digging deep into anyone tonight. And I am wondering, like we invited well, we have it on the Patreon cast, which is coming up next week. Actually, I was going to say anyone who wants us to go deep on a player, send us a note, but we'll do that on the Patreon cast.
I mean, we do that every episode. Okay.
Yeah.
Like we do lots of deep dives.
But you choose the players this time. It's well, that's the whole idea. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're going to do our Yahoo rankings. We'll do some deep dives for the next episode. But anyway, all right, let's take a break. We'll be back in just a sec to talk about some more schedule stuff. All right, we are back, Brian. The two things I want to talk about before we close out today. First of all, I want to talk about goalies and back to teams that have a lot versus a few back-to-back games. That's one thing that's important. And then the other thing, I just want to set the schedule here so we don't like run out of time. The other thing I want to talk about is like looking at the first couple weeks of the season, because this is the first episode of Matchup Maximizers also. And I think when you draft, like we were talking about just overall light days, but I think also it's worth considering like with your final couple picks, if you're planning on streaming, like why not just use your last couple picks of the draft to take the players that play a lot in the first week or two, so you don't have to be scrambling trying to grab these guys out of free agency, right? Just get them, consider those last 2 picks as your streams, and so you might as well take players that play a lot. So those are the 2 things I want to talk about. Let's start with goalies, okay? So the general theory here is most teams, this isn't a guarantee. Obviously, like the coach could do what they want. Generally, when a team has back-to-back games, they play the backup goalie on the second game, right? Or maybe they play the backup goalie on the first game. They usually split the starts between the starting goalie and the backup goalie because they don't want to just tire out a goalie by playing 2 days in a row. So you can look at the schedule and see how many teams have a lot of, if a team has a lot of back-to-backs, that means we could expect their starter to maybe have fewer games than you'd expect. Like even if we expect them to be a volume starter, like they'll at least play the backup on those games. And if a team has fewer back-to-backs, maybe the starter is going to play more. And you know what, Brian, to be honest, I'm going to throw it out there. I don't even care that much about this. I know a lot of people do, just because like, I think maybe it's good sometimes for the starter to get rest. Like it might be like actually good for your goalie overall to play a bit fewer and be rested. I don't know. Like I feel like maybe it's like a bargain with the devil. It's like the bargain with the devil. Like, it's like, oh, I want to get like 70 games for my goalie. And then they like blow you up a bunch because they're too tired,
Remember that we have like talked about, and I don't remember if we checked this trend for the end of last year, but we had checked the trend for the previous couple, and goalies petered out, right? Like they did well up into a point. And then usually by the time you got into your fantasy playoffs, the goalies that had won you weeks at the start of the year were doing nothing to help you towards the end of the year. So I don't know, Elon. I think maybe the prevailing wisdom is get your stud goalie and sell high before they start crashing, and nothing might be there to stop the crash either. Like I hear you, but like oh crap, sorry. Like I hear you that you want your goalie to be rested, but there's so few number one workhorses out there, and the ones who are doing it, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to like put all the pieces together here and figure out, okay, if everyone is crashing, then do I really care about like the distribution of games like up until January or February? I guess to play along, I should assume that my goalie is going to be reasonably good all year long. And I don't know, Elon. I think
maybe it's just
I
a dumb
think
theory. You don't have to
I
give
think
it too much time.
I think the guys who play 70 games are the ones who can play
Right.
70
I see
games.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But let me tell you some of the teams that have like fewer back-to-backs. So the fewest, again, I'm only looking between April 10th. Sorry, I'm only looking between October 10th and March 17th because I'm not considering the couple of playoffs. I'll do another episode. Like, I guess that's another thing we should probably talk about, man. Because a lot of people draft assuming that they're going to make the playoffs. And so they already want to like stack their playoff lineups. I might have to just leave that as an exercise to the listener. Right now, I'm definitely in the couple. It's like a very competitive league, right? So it's really hard to make the playoffs. There's only 6 of the 14 teams make it. But obviously, if you're in a league where you just dominate every year, then you might want to use these schedule tools and like start looking at the teams with the loaded playoff schedules. But anyways, looking not right before the playoffs, the teams with the fewest back-to-backs. There's actually the one with the fewest is Seattle, only 5. Only 5 back-to-backs between October 10th and March 17th. So if Grubauer holds on to the starter's job and he could handle it, like he might play a lot of games, right? Because they won't be forced to put in the backup just because it's few back-to-back. So again, maybe a reason to bump up Grubauer. Then there's a few teams with 6. There's Calgary. So if Markstrom, again, there's like a lot of ifs here with goalies, that's the problem. But like if Markstrom could hold the job, he would play a lot, right? Because it's few back-to-backs. Colorado, so same deal with Georgiev. And now we just heard that Francouz is injured. So even more reason to expect Georgiev to just play and play and play. I made the argument, Brian, that I think Georgiev should go up to tier 1 last episode. And I think you said that you wanted to leave him where he is. But he's someone I'm definitely eyeing. Then yeah, Edmonton, Florida. There's a lot of teams that have 6. Oh, actually just 2 more. Edmonton and Florida. Okay, so Edmonton, I guess they might be a tandem, but I do expect Stuart Skinner to get more just because he's better. So maybe he'll get even more since there's fewer opportunities for Campbell to like have a chance to prove himself, and there'll be fewer back-to-backs. And then Florida, which I think Bobrovsky might be a decent late sleeper. And again, I hate giving away my draft strategies here, but I've seen Bobrovsky fall far. And this isn't like a couple seasons ago when we were wondering if maybe Spencer Knight is going to take over. I think at this point, like Bobrovsky is the starter, and until otherwise, like I think he'll play the majority of the games. And now even with few back-to-backs, makes him even more appealing. We'll see which Bobrovsky shows up, of course.
That's the question. Or what do you want?
No, I just said like a whole bunch of things. You could just say whatever you want. Or you could even just tell me that I should just keep going and talk about the heavy days ones. Up to you.
Okay. Yeah, Elon, I don't think I have much to disagree with. I guess the one thing, like you said, Edmonton is probably going to be a tandem, but Skinner will start more because he's better. I think I don't think we'll see a tandem split. Like I don't know. I don't think Jack Campbell's up to handling. Like so maybe they'll enter the season. Like I could see Skinner starting like 2/3, and maybe if there's like some impressive play from Campbell, maybe he can work his way up to 50% share if Skinner isn't playing lights out. But I think over time, and it won't take that long, both guys will settle into their like one. I think Jack Campbell is a straight backup. Like I don't even think he's a 1B.
Yeah, that's definitely reasonable. I think so too. I think Edmonton would like it to not be the case, but they might not have a choice. Yeah. The teams with like the most back-to-backs during this stretch, New Jersey. So New Jersey with like that great schedule, but they also have a ton of back-to-backs. So we're already nervous about Vitek Vanacek, and then also they'll also have a lot of opportunities for the backup to like continue to prove themselves they're better than Vanacek. So could be a reason to knock down Vanacek a little bit. They have 13 back-to-backs, I think, like I said, between October 10th and March 17th. Also, Washington has 13 back-to-backs. So I don't know, an opportunity for Charlie Lindgren is the backup on Washington.
Yeah.
So probably less of a concern, but still Lindgren will get in his games. And he was decent when he played last year, from what I recall. I remember Kemper got injured for a short stretch and Lindgren was really good. So yeah, so maybe a reason to bump down Kemper and Vanacek a little bit. Also the Rangers, but who cares? Like I could honestly see the Rangers just playing Shesterkin in both games.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. The Minnesota actually has a lot. They have 12. So like I said, so New Jersey and Washington were at 13, and then the Rangers and Minnesota are at 12. Oh, along with Carolina. So yeah, for Minnesota, like I could definitely see them just splitting. I don't think there's a reason why they'll play Gustafsson 2 games in a row. They'll probably definitely split those back-to-backs. And I think that might be a battle all throughout the season of who is the starter at a given time. So maybe more reason to be like, I know we're excited about Gustafsson and his numbers last season were incredible, but there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Fleury to prove that he still has something in the tank. And then Carolina already the three-headed monster kind of. I guess Kochetkov probably goes to the minors to start, but also lots of back-to-backs. So another reason to maybe fade Frederick Anderson a little bit.
Yeah, I'll go back and just say I can say like the Gustafsson Fleury thing I think is going to be very similar to what I just said about Skinner and Campbell. Like, you know, it's not outside the realm of possibility that Fleury challenges Gustafsson or Gustafsson slips out, but like I think he's the real deal, even with a short track record. Elon, like he's not on as good a team like you were talking about Georgiev in tier one. And like my argument against that is like, yes, he's on a great team and he's put up good numbers recently. There's just not the track record to make me like really be able to anoint him a tier one goalie. But Gustafsson, I would be more like, I know this isn't how we tier goalies, right? It's not just about who's the better goalie, it's who's in the better situation. And Georgiev is also like more likely to get more starts. But I think Gustafsson would be the better goalie. And like it might just be 1 year away from being the better fantasy option too.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. The reason why I'm so high on Georgiev is because there's no competition and he's on a great team versus like assuming Francouz is actually hurt now. Versus Gustafsson, who might be better than Georgiev. Like maybe Colorado makes that trade, 100 times out of 100 if they're offered Gustafsson for Georgiev. I'm not sure, but doesn't matter because Georgiev still has Fleury there, who is making a decent amount of money, and I don't know, he'll probably play some games. If it depends how much he's fallen off as he keeps getting older. All right, so Brian, the other thing I wanted to talk about next was the first couple weeks of the schedule. Okay, this is like more the prime matchup maximizer stuff. So I'm bringing you in here to talk about. Let's look at just like the first couple weeks. Okay, are you with me with this general idea? You kind of want to. Do you ever do this, Brian? Do you ever draft looking at the first couple weeks of the schedule? I just feel like what a bummer it would be, for example, to take like with your last pick, you take a swing on. I'm trying to look at the team with the like. Okay, a New York Islanders player. I really think that. Oh man, that's a tough team to think. Who's a sleeper on the Islanders that you might take with a late pick? Do you think of even one? Oh God.
Joking. Okay, I'm joking. Like the joke is that he's unsigned, right? But he's not retired. So Lou is definitely just like got a contract in the drawer for him. A sleeper on the Islanders.
Maybe Palmieri. Maybe you think Palmieri will do something.
Do we have any faith in Oliver Wahlstrom?
Sure. Let's say for the sake of argument. I mean, okay. I don't, but like, yeah. So like, but why would you, if you're going to like, oh, I think Wahlstrom might be something, but then like FYI, the Islanders don't play at all. Like the season starts on a Tuesday. The Islanders don't play at all until Saturday, which is a super busy day. You're not even going to get them in your lineup. And they don't play again until the following Tuesday. And then after that, Friday, Saturday. So it's like, you're barely even getting any games. So don't even waste. Even if you think there's an Islander that might be a good sleeper, like don't hold them because no one is going to draft. Everyone's going to drop this person for someone more exciting anyways, right? So that's why I think you want to look at it. Did I get you to answer, by the way? Like, so have you drafted like looking at the first couple of weeks of the season?
I mean, like basically you're picking your first free agents, right? Yeah. Like you're picking, like the last 2 or 3 slots, depending on your league structure and format. You are picking up the guys who you hope to get a couple extra games out of in the first week or 2 weeks and likely move on from before long. Like, I guess the 2 directions you can go at the end of your draft are pick a bunch of guys with big upside, like take flyers on these guys who are still available. So not everybody is bought in or expecting big things, or it's unlikely that these guys will do anything really special, but there's a chance. So you can either grab them, or you can be a little more practical and pragmatic about it and just look for extra GP in your first couple of weeks. And Elon, I'll go back to what you were saying, like with the Islanders, like if you're going to take someone who you've got a gut feeling about who's going to break out this year or be in a really good position, it helps you not at all to have them barely get in your lineup for the first couple of weeks. Like it makes them useless because usually if it happens, it's not going to happen right away. Like it might be and a lot of starts and stops, even on the way to being broken out and doing all the things that you hope they do when you drafted them with your last pick at 247th overall. So it's kind of pointless to try and place a bet on a guy, unless of course you're in like a league where you don't need to stream to win, or it's like a lower key, a more casual league where you can really just pick the guy and wait a month and like make up for it if he doesn't take off within that month.
Yeah, I mean, it depends how confident you are. If you really feel like Oliver Wahlstrom's about to have an 80-point season, then I guess draft him before he gets a hat trick on that busy Saturday, and then everyone's rushing to get him on the Sunday. So, but I think we get the gist here. So, okay, let me tell you some of the teams that have really good schedules to start. So, there's only one team that plays the first 2 days of the season on both Tuesday and Wednesday, and that's Chicago. So again, all of the guys we talked about, Reichel is still out there. They already have a good schedule for the whole season.
Reichel. Would you take Taylor Radish if he was still available at the end of your Cupful draft?
I mean, versus who, I guess. Like, also by then, I'm hoping by the end of the draft we'll have some like preseason. Like, if you're telling me that Radish is on the top power play and the top line with Bedard in preseason, assume. Yeah. So then sure, and get the first 2 games to start the season, and then also.
But is Tuesday a heavy day?
All the first week is like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Obviously, okay. I just told you the days of the week, and Saturday is the only heavy one. So it's a pretty light to start the season, actually. So yeah, you'll get both of those games for sure on the Tuesday and Wednesday, and then they play Saturday, and then they play again on the Monday right after, which is another light day. So you're gonna get a lot of Chicago games right off the bat there. So if you want to stream someone in, that's definitely a good idea. Yeah, maybe even you grab someone like a Athanasiou, like you mentioned, or Tyler Johnson. Like, just get those games. Maybe like Athanasiou or Tyler Johnson, you're dropping after the first couple days. But especially if you're seeing anything about someone being on the top power play.
Okay. So like I'm hearing those names, and Elon, I want you to tell me, is there anyone playing Monday, Wednesday or Tuesday, Wednesday that I'm still going to get 2 games out of on the first 3? If like Andres Athanasiou and Tyler Johnson are just a little too unpalatable for me.
Yeah, I'll throw you some more teams. Okay, so Vegas goes Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the first. Oh no, sorry. Vegas goes Monday and Wednesday. Sorry, it's not Monday, Wednesday. Sorry, Brian. It's actually Brian, just to correct you. Yeah, there's no Monday to start like that week. The week starts on Tuesday. But yeah, that's Tuesday, Thursday, but they're light. So yeah, so Vegas goes Tuesday, Thursday. So they definitely are a team you can target.
I'm gonna throw out a name.
Hit me.
Are you ready?
Can I guess?
Yeah, you can guess.
I don't know. I guess Barbashev is probably going earlier than this name.
Oh, you know what? Let me check the mocks. That's a good question. He's going.
Barbashev is still on the Eichel line.
He's going 164th overall.
Okay, so who's there in Vegas? That's I could easily look this up, but okay, let me try to think. This is a fun exercise for the listeners too, right? Okay, so the Vegas, you've got Eichel, Stone. Obviously, you care about Stevenson. I assume is going too early, and then Barbashev. Oh, I'm probably sounding like an idiot here. Who am I missing, Brian? Who's the forward that you think? Is it Roy? Like,
no. And like, it's not terribly apparent. And like, I guess I've just seen a few charts on the guy, but Brett Howden, I think, might have a chance at being relevant. Like if he slots in with, like right now, it could be with Chandler Stevenson and like, I guess Mark Stone, if he's healthy, or Marchessault. It depends on how Vegas plays their cards, but he seemed towards the end of the season, like there were definitely some moments in the playoffs where he seemed really good. Like in the first series against Edmonton, he had 5 points in the first 6 games. Then he was quiet for most of the rest of the playoffs. And so maybe I'm thinking just like too much about that little run. But he looked good. And like, I think it was Travis Yost who was like making the case that the Golden Knights had found their next Chandler Steve, like similar career. Like they got Brett Howden for free. He'd been around in the league a bit, but never really given an opportunity. And the Golden Knight, like same way as Stevenson. And now he might be in a chance to flourish that he's never had before. This is his age 25 season coming up. So we probably haven't seen the best that he has to offer. Like there's a chance is what I'm saying. So, and like, he's a guy who fits into this streaming target, right at the end of the season, especially if I like the line rushes coming out of camp.
Yeah. Again, like just stream him in for the Tuesday, Thursday. And then you can always drop, by the way, that Thursday, the Tuesday's against Seattle, pretty good team. Thursday's against San Jose, which I think might be the worst team. Then Saturday's against Anaheim. Saturday's a crazy busy day, but if somehow you're in a league where there's no benches or whatever, like I think Vegas is going to feast on San Jose and Anaheim in those games. So you might get some points there. All right. So we mentioned Chicago. We mentioned Vegas. I'll tell you some more. So there's actually like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's still 6 more teams that play 6 times in those first 2 weeks. But I guess even to really focus on the guys that play 6 times in the first 2 weeks and also a couple days like early on. The next one is Seattle. They play Tuesday, Thursday to start, and then also play Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday the following week, which are busy days. But at least you can get that early start. So Seattle is like a team with like a bunch of guys, right? Like they have Tolvanen. Like
So
I'm sure there's
many
gonna be a lot
guys.
of Seattle guys. Like I'd be curious like to look at the mock ADPs, Brian. Like how many Seattle guys are being taken? Like I guess we could filter by that, right? Let me just
Yeah,
quickly.
let's pop a filter on there. I think I see you already. Oh no, you're not already doing it.
I'm on it.
Uh
I'm on it, Brian.
you could, okay.
But
Like I and what I expect to see once you have done the filter is that it's
so
like
many.
they're all, there's so many and they're all bunched together, and like maybe, I don't know, Burakovsky's in the top 100, but outside of him, no one is. How'd I do?
Sorry, one sec. I just realized I put a filter on. One sec, sorry. No, I put a filter on Dom's sheet, which has the. Anyways, but okay, I'll just say some names. It's fine. I can make it work. Okay.
Here's my fan.
Oh. Okay, we got it. See if I can find that point later. But okay. Yeah, so looking at players on Seattle who have been getting drafted in our mock drafts, you've got McCann, Beniers, Dunn, Burakovsky is late. Yeah, so he's someone you could definitely potentially get with a late pick. Then there's Jordan Eberle, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Ellie Tolvanen, Yanni Gourde, Jaden Schwartz. Like, so there's quite a lot of Seattle guys that could be like, that will get power play time. Like a lot of, like probably outside of McCann and Beniers, probably every single other forward that will be on the top power play, like will be available to you right at the end of your draft. So not a bad stream to start the season.
Yeah, should I and I'll throw, like, those guys that people are thinking, oh, like this could be the year, like something big could happen. I'll just add Shane Wright's name to the mix. Like he's not the one that I doubt it that I'm going for him out of that group. Like I'd probably, well, Beniers will be gone for sure. I guess of the guys likely to be around, you might have Gourde and Shane Wright available to you at the very end of the draft to get some extra GP.
Yeah, I think Eberle and Burakovsky and Bjorkstrand and Tolvanen will also probably be there, to be honest.
I think they'll be. Sorry, I'm thinking like exclusively of last pick, but you're right. You should be thinking of your last few picks.
Yeah. Okay. So other teams that have good schedules right at the start. So Nashville also goes Tuesday, Thursday. I like how you tried to like narc me out to Dom and tell him that I was like some like Nashville super fan or something. But Nashville is a team that is definitely also a classic. Like they're going to have a lot of guys that might be getting good roles that are available at the end of your draft because they have just a lot of these like players that have yet to break out yet, but that might be interesting. So it's like some names I'll throw out there. So obviously like Josi and Forsberg will be taken early. Aside from that, like kind of everyone else might be out there. Like I don't know when Ryan O'Reilly is going to be taken, but if he's falling pretty late, he might be a fun pick for just get those first couple games. And then you have like Luke Evangelista, Tommy Novak, Cody Glass, Tomasinos, Parsonen. I know people love Parsonen. I think Victor told me that of all these guys, like Parsonen is his favorite of like the prospects on Nashville. So yeah, take your shot. Like who knows? But Nashville again, like 2 games early on to start. So again, like a nice stream to start. Those games are against Tampa and Seattle, so they might be tough games. But I feel like also in the NHL, like correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, I feel like there's more goals usually to start the season. Maybe like the defense is still like kicking off the cobwebs or something.
Sorry. Yeah, I think that's been a thing, especially like the first couple weeks. Also, it's not just like defense is tired and goalie. Like, yes, that's one piece. Defense is kicking off the rest. Goalies are kicking off the rest. Teams are working on new systems. But I think really one of the less acknowledged drivers of higher goal scoring at the start of the season is the officiating crackdown that always comes with it. Like, I don't think it was last season now. I think it's already 2 seasons ago. But remember when they were going to crack down on cross checks? So like cross-checking a guy to the back in the crease was suddenly the penalty it should be. It should be. You should never be able to put 2 hands on a stick and hit a guy. Like there's no hockey happening in that, depending on your definition. But it seems pretty illegal just on this. Anyway, they cracked down on it for just like a week or 2. Because it's so ingrained in all the players. But anyway, there's a whole lot more power play opportunities usually at the start of the season. And then, of course, it tails off gradually towards the middle of the season where it settles into the valley that is just the usual power play numbers.
Okay, yeah. So those are some teams you can maybe target with your early picks. Maybe Brian, to finish off, since we have a little bit of time, let's look at those playoff schedules super quickly. Okay, I've just like updated my schedule grid sheet to just sort. So this is I'm looking at the couple playoffs, which are going to run from March 8th. It's going to be 3-week playoffs ending on April 7th. Then there's still going to be 2 more weeks of NHL action that we don't count in the couple. We don't like to count the end of the season just because those games, like people are getting benched, things get a little wonky. But yeah, so looking at those 3 critical playoff weeks in our league, and obviously you'll want to check stuff for your league. There's 3 teams that play 11 times. So I guess that's going to be 4, 4, and 3. One of them has 5 light day games. So Washington already was a team we talked about with a great like overall schedule before the playoffs. Like it continues into the playoffs. So another reason to grab maybe Ovechkin if you have an early pick, or some of these other guys. Who else? Did we talk about Tom Wilson? I guess we have to mention Tom Wilson at this point, who like just signed that big contract. I think I asked you on some show, like after he signed the contract, like maybe does that mean he's going to have a prominent role? Like, I don't know. I think we're like not like super excited about Tom Wilson, but also as Washington has fewer and fewer exciting like potential players, maybe Wilson actually gets on a power play at some point. And yeah, like I said, Washington, great schedule. So another reason to like him.
And with tradition, like the guy on Washington who is just like always there and we never actually really talk about, TJ Oshie.
Yeah. If he's healthy.
Yeah. I mean, that's always the question. And like, just like Tom Wilson, if he's not suspended, TJ Oshie, yeah, misses significant time each year. The last 2 years, though, he's been below a 50-point pace. And that comes after a few seasons where he was floating between about 60 and 70-point paces. Part of that has been less power play output. And part of it has just been, I think he's older. Like, do you actually, Elon, you want to feel old? I did not realize. Sure. I didn't realize how old TJ Oshie is, entering his age 37 season.
Who's older between him and Ovi?
Ovechkin. Isn't Ovechkin like 41 or something?
No, but I guess he's out there. Maybe he's 38. No, maybe Ochi is like
Ovechkin. Oh, it's Ovechkin's birthday today. Oh. Happy birthday.
Okay, well, he got a lot of play on the podcast. Yeah, he's 38.
Ovechkin's 38, but like he and I are the same age, and I think he looks older, even though he's a professional athlete.
I guess he's gray. You don't have the gray hair, so I guess that does something. Okay, so yeah, other guys. So I guess I'm going to tell you the teams. So there's 3 teams that play 11 times. Like I said, Edmonton, Ottawa, and Washington. Ottawa and Edmonton, though, are on a lot of busy days. If you want to look at who has the most light day games in the playoffs, there's 3 teams that have 5 light day games over the 3 weeks. And that's Washington, Seattle, and Buffalo. So there's another. So, whatever. Take that for what you will. Bump those guys up. If you think you're going to make the playoffs, if you're like confident you're in a league where like you always make the playoffs, or let's say it's like a 12-team league and 8 teams make the playoffs, then like you might want to look at that. Like Buffalo obviously also has a ton of exciting players. Like, you're looking at like your Tage Thompsons and your Skinner and your Tuck, Dahlin. Oh yeah, by the way, Washington, Brian, I'm surprised you didn't mention John Karlsson as a guy that maybe you bump up because of that good Washington playoff schedule, assuming he'll be healthy, right?
You know what? I'm trying to take the episode off of John Karlsson Tuck after the firestorm that came up the last. I already got my little Karlsson mention in. I thought it was nice and subtle and concise and quick. And I don't mean to belabor the point, but I'm like that moment has excited me to see. Like, usually there's some guy we're going back and forth on, Elon, like that we really disagree heavily on. And that's one of the bigger disagreements that I've had with anyone about any player going into this season. So I'm looking forward to being proven right.
Is there anyone that we've talked about like I'm super high on that you're not, like, going into this season? Can you think of anyone off the top of your head?
Tom Wilson.
I mean, why? Because of what I just said now?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's fine. I'm like so crazy high. Okay, we'll try to come up with someone so that you could have your John Karlsson. You could be excited when he does well, and I want to have someone that I could be excited and throw it in your face if that person does well. So that'll be fun. We'll come
Wait, you mean you can't just be excited? Like being excited is one thing, and then you added the throw it in your face.
Well,
part.
I just say like for our dynamic, like it'll be fun to come on. You're going to be able to come on and be like, "Oh, did you see that John Karlsson week last week?" Eh?
I can celebrate.
Good call, Brian.
What dynamic do you like? We could both celebrate what we believe.
Yeah, but come on. This is podcasting. This is a podcast with 2 hosts. You got to have that little bit of like give it like edge. We can't just always be like
the ribbing, the chirping.
You got to have the ribbon. That we're not that popular.
We used to argue all the time.
We need to be more like 32 Thoughts or the one that just outed, the Columbus coach, like that whole situation with the Biz Nasty and
Are
what's
you
that
are you
podcast
forgetting
called?
the name, or are you intentionally not naming it?
No, I'm forgetting the name.
Oh, okay,
Sorry.
spitting
Oh, it's Spitting
chicklets.
Chicklets. My brother
Yeah.
loves Spitting Chicklets. Anyway, yeah, like we need to be like those. They're always ribbing each other, right? And look how popular they are. They have so many more listeners than us.
They're like professional rippers, though.
Okay, we've got to work on it this year. Anyway, hopefully people enjoyed this episode. Deep dive, obviously not a standard keeping Karlsson fair. If this is like your first episode somehow, again, go check out a lot of our recent ones. But yeah, I think this was useful. It was a useful exercise for me just to start looking at the schedule and considering it. And I'm going to be doing a lot of that. We've got, like we said at the start, 5 days until the Cupful slow draft start. And I'm going to be like really thinking about this and trying to decide exactly how much I want to bump up guys with good schedules versus, downgrade guys with bad schedules. So yeah, and then you have the playoffs, you have the first week, you have the goalie stuff. So it's a lot to think about. And I think just knowing about it is half the battle, right? Just knowing it's something whenever you go to make your pick, at least know what you're getting into. And yeah, so hopefully you liked it. Once again, keepingkarlsson.com/tools. If you want to see the schedule tools I've built, you can just make a copy of that spreadsheet, or like I said, Frozen Tools has a really great schedule tool also that you can make use of. Aside from that, Brian, hopefully people have been enjoying the pod. I think I said also at the start, just please subscribe. That actually helps us, like, I don't know, wherever you listen to your podcasts, your Apple Podcasts, Spotify, like just subscribing, getting it auto downloaded every episode. It's like actually a favor you're doing for us. If you care, something you can do.
And writing a 5-star review.
Oh, that's a huge favor. I was going to give you like the hierarchy of favors. Like if you want to do barely anything, you could subscribe. I guess then higher than that is like telling a friend, like that's good. And then like leaving a review is like already like, wow, thanks so much. A 5-star review with like glowing comments. Amazing. And then of course, if you really want to help us out and also get, I think, a ton of great perks, if I may, in return, become a patron. keepingkarlsson.com/patron. We give everything we can to our patrons for just the $5 a month US. You get everything we have. So you join our community. Brian and I are super active in there, as well as like some really smart people, like maybe smarter than us even, especially for some topics. Like you could talk to Tacos Overflow all about his scheduling thoughts. He's very happy to share. Though I think he should just keep it to us 14th overall drafters personally, but I'm sure that he'll still share if other people want to tag him and ask him about stuff. Yes, you become a patron. You can still get into the Cupful if you want to play. Like Brian said, you'll get on the wait list. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to get into that. We have monthly patron casts. I guess, Brian, we have to actually schedule something for September. Man, this month is going by fast. So yeah, keepingkarlsson.com/patron. But with that, Brian, let's cue the outro music. Why don't you go ahead and read us the credits?
All right. I actually need to.
I put an edit point there because I just knew that you weren't
that I neglected to bring up the
it's credits. Like now it's like ingrained me. Whenever I say read us the credits, I put an edit point because
you're like, oh crap, he's
not oh crap, it's just like instinct.
He forgot again.
God, again.
Sometimes I'm on top of it.
Usually there's like, it's worth a look. Like maybe there'll at least be like a couple seconds of silence that I can cut out at that part, if nothing else.
Long time ago.
I gotta go.
I wrote down like some, huh?
No, just.
Did you say you have to go soon?
I said to go soon, but I don't know how long the story is going to be.
Nope, now you don't get the story.
Okay.
You're mad that we keep teasing the Patreon. Someone's on you. You wear that. What a guy.
All right.
Wants to fight me, doesn't want to listen. Just the perfect partner. All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dauber Hockey and literally powered by our patrons. All right. They're the ones who, and you could be the one too, who helps create more episodes of the show via your support. Special thanks to our super supporters. Going back, I'm going to go backwards this time by date first joined. Patty, date first supported. Patty, Ricard, former Ultimate Champ Max, Rob, David, Derek, Ryan, Tom, Zachary, Andrea, Sammy, Ivan, Aaron, Patrick, Don, and Roman. Thank you all for your support. Thank you all to all our patrons for your support. Thanks, Kevin Hebert, our Cupful coordinator and chief of automation, these team allied chats we've got. We should have talked about them at the start. Okay, next week. They're amazing. Like if you were afraid to ask for advice on our Discord server because your opponents might see, now everybody is in a group captained by a tier 1 competitor with everybody else who is picking at the same slot in their draft. So you have like 43 other people to talk draft strategy with, where your opponents will never see. Like, it's the biggest and smartest fantasy hockey group chat you've ever been a part of, with no concern for prying eyes. It's a brilliant, and we built it with feedback that was given to us from our patrons in our exit surveys. It's very exciting. So that's really fun. So
awesome.
Thanks.
I just want to say something
Yeah.
for people listening that might be like, why did the music stop like 30 seconds ago? So just a reminder that like
Okay.
it's because I didn't know at the time. So anyways, let's get that music going again. Brian, continue with the credits.
All right. Elon, Shams Ben Amor, you're still crushing. GameDayTweets.com. Thanks for helping us stay off Twitter. Logos by BrandonWeeb.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. Oh, also, Elon, I didn't thank them, but we might have I think we've got a Short Shifts season debut.
Oh my God.
Coming up. It's not going to be long. Yeah. Super exciting. Now, if you get ready for your drafts. So you'll be hearing from Lewis, Ben. Nope. You'll be hearing from Lewis, Shams, Jeremy, all in due time. Did I forget anyone? No, that's it.
John Reed is on the ones and twos.
Okay, John Reed's on the ones and twos. I think that's more a music thing than this episode was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dobber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, HockeyGoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, Yahoo, and Fontrox.
Great job as always, Brian. Such a fun show to do with you. Until we come back next week for something awesome. I think it might be Yahoo rankings, but we'll see. What should we all do while we wait for that, and while we wait in anticipation for those couple drafts to start?
Hey, please just do whatever you can. Like, invite people into your pools, or say, hey, that's not okay. Just do what you need to do to make sure that fantasy hockey can be for everyone.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Good job. I was gonna say
what were you gonna say?
Well, I'll say for the group, for the YouTube, maybe the show's over, but like the people who are in their league chats being like, good job, boys, or let's go, like, keep in mind there might not only be boys in your league. So that's, you should have said, it's not very inclusive language.
You should have said that.
Well, it was the end of the show.
That's like that
should be at the top of the show thing. I don't know.
Was this 503 or 504?
503. Damn. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. This was great. Brian, always a pleasure. Talk to you now twice in the same day. Amazing. Wow. And soon I'm going to Ottawa. I'm excited for
patron meetup.
We should have mentioned that. Let's mention that next show. We gotta plan the patron cast also.
So much to mention.
Too much work.
There's a lot of work.
But
we love what we do.
Why are we doing all this work? I'm just kidding. I'm kind of kidding. Okay. See you all later. Bye.